So I see everybody back but Bert. Is he hanging out in a room somewhere? Did you close him out too?
No.
Not, I know he said he was in the car, so it might take him a bit to get back on.
Okay.
All right, Kyle says that it's now being streamed.
All right, start recording, Anthony, while me and Vanessa check that.
You're live on YouTube.
So I see everybody back but Bert.
How did you get so
Is
loud?
he hanging out in a room somewhere? Did you close him out too?
No.
Not, I know he said he was back on.
Okay.
All right, Kyle says that it's now being streamed.
All right, start recording, Anthony, while me and Vanessa check that.
You're live on YouTube.
So I see everybody back but Bert. Is he hanging out in a room somewhere? Did you close him out too?
No.
Not, I know he said he was back on.
Okay.
All right, Kyle says that it's now being streamed.
All right, start recording, Anthony, while me and Vanessa check that.
All right, I was having a technical difficulty. I'm good now. Are you good?
Yes. Can you see my screen
I see your desktop right now.
that shows Article 6? I'm sorry,
Right.
Article 5?
I saw it a few minutes ago, but now I'm
Oh,
seeing
so I have to
your-
move it to a different screen. Okay.
Yeah, that's always, there it is.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be looking at you because my camera's over here, but my information is on a different screen. So I apologize to my team. When Mr. Colucci put his proposals up one page at a time, I had forgotten to do that. That's all I was doing while we were on break, is trying to break my proposals down one page at a time. And it didn't work as seamlessly as I would have hoped. So, but I think I have them all. And so I'm ready if you are, Anthony. Yes? Okay. So the first one, this is just a little bit of language cleanup. We still have in the contract under Article 5 union rights that we're going to provide you at no cost with one copy of materials relating to all board meetings. I did talk to the board secretary, Pam Escobar, and asked her if there was anything over and above what was available to the media, because it used to be about the press, on in some site that you did not get. And she indicated that right now everything is available online, and that's how you all get your materials, is through the online portal. So I took out the section that said the board shall provide the union at no cost with one copy of all the materials. I took that sentence out and changed it to all board materials are available to Brevard Federation of Teachers through the online portal. Okay. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. Next page, under Article 6, general conditions of employment, fair employment practices. We changed this, I believe, last year or maybe 2 years ago, related to adding the word terminated, but I think we needed to clean it up a little bit to say that if any teacher shall be disciplined, demoted, suspended, terminated, or suffered loss of pay, the discipline shall be for just cause and may be challenged pursuant to the provisions of Article 4, Step 4 of the agreement.
And what is Article 4?
I
Step 4?
believe that is the arbitration clause, but let me,
Yeah, I'm looking for it. So
Yeah,
I
I believe it's the arbitration clause.
Yes.
Yes.
Why did you feel the need to add that in?
Well, because if if we're doing any of these demotions, suspensions, terminations, it's already been to the board. And the grievance process, steps 1, 2, and 3 go back prior to board action, and we would not have the ability to overturn anything the board had done anyway. So it would have to go, if we are demoting a teacher or suspending a teacher, that is board action.
So that's not quite accurate, because let's say that for instance, going back to our drug policy, a teacher is going to be terminated because of a drug test. We've never been able to grieve that until after the board took action, because technically they haven't been disciplined yet. They haven't been demoted. They haven't been suspended. Now as I'm saying that, I'm thinking maybe it is, because if they're suspended, if they're terminated, yes, then that would go to arbitration. I'm trying to think, are there any circumstances?
Anthony,
Kyle?
can I help you out? I
Yeah.
seem to remember, and I could be wrong, maybe 2 years ago, there was a teacher that was disciplined for failure to show up for work. I could be wrong on the details, but it went to the board for like a certain length suspension, but then we grieved it down to a lower suspension and it was adjusted. Is that not how that went? I thought we had to wait for the board to act before we could grieve.
Yeah, I think there might be some circumstances where the board would be the first one to take action. And so we would still grieve it and not take it to arbitration.
Also, this is the language that we use to grieve discipline. So for instances, cases that might not rise to the board, so a letter of reprimand. So
Okay, well,
I wouldn't immediately go to step 4. It would go through the 1, 2, 3 process.
Well, knowing the issue that we had most recently with the termination and where that was going to fall on the schedule, maybe you could come to the table with some language to address that particular issue. Like when the board has already made an action on something, how it, where that process should begin.
Okay, let us think about it.
Okay. The next one is, so, just as you have some needs with, for your teachers, one of our really, really strong needs that we have is professional development. And we would like to propose that the 36-44 calendar of professional development becomes a 40-40 split. So that's our first ask in the section related to calendar, is that 36-44 becomes 40-40.
So there are some things that go on during pre-planning that it doesn't seem like there's a good answer as to whose time that belongs to. For instance, an open house, right? Or not an open house, but like I don't know.
Registration?
Well, registration, or they have like, can't think of the term, but like
Meet and greet.
Meet and greet. Thank you, Matt. Like a meet and greet, and then there's the infamous, the videos, the bloodborne pathogens and all that, and can never get clear answers on whose time that goes to. So that just is a thought.
Okay, we'll look forward to more discussion about it. So again, a couple years ago, there was an agreement to reduce the number of professional development, during the early release days. And I think when I could be wrong, Vanessa, you might help me here. I can't remember. But I think when I first got to the district in 2013, we were doing professional development every other week. And somehow we reduced it through agreement to just 3 times a semester. Again, with all of the expectations and the changes and the state requirements that continue to be put forth related to academics and all of the instruction and in curriculum and all of those things, we would request to go to 4 a semester. So that would truly be 1 a month if we counted the months as, August, September, October, November. We're not there for the whole month of December, and then January, February, March, April. It really would be 1 a week. It certainly doesn't take us back to the every other week, but it's once a month. So we'd like you to consider that. And we also added, to make it a little clearer, professional development will not be scheduled for the Friday prior to quarterly grades being due, except for non-school site departments where members of the bargaining unit do not have the responsibility for entering grades and or completing report cards. So some of those groups of teachers that are not at a school site or in a department.
Dr. Green, I had one question.
Yes.
If you're done with this section.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying agree or disagree. How you laid it out once a month, would that be something that you would be against, maybe laying out that it has to be used once a month? Because I know previously when I was in the classroom, sometimes like my principal would maybe try to load 2 or 3 trainings on back-to-back weeks or something like that. Well, technically that would be allowed inside of the contract currently. And the way you're laying it out is maybe once a month, which when I'm not saying agree or disagree, that it does sound a little bit more reasonable when you lay it out once a month. But if all of a sudden it was 4 in a row, I'm not saying that, that sounds a lot worse. Is that,
Yeah, we could
I don't know your
definitely
thought on that.
We could definitely consider identifying it. The problem would be, for example, when we are having vendors like for example, the reading people that are coming in and they're scheduled on particular times, and we don't have a way to alter that because of the number of sites that they work, the vendors work at throughout the state. But we could consider it.
I'd have to go back and look at my notes or review videos, but I do believe the conversation at the table was when we went down, when we stopped doing every other, well, it was Wednesday at the time because the early release days were on Wednesdays, and we went to the 1 Wednesday a month, the so many per semester, that the conversation was that it would be 1 per month, and the principal should assign those, when they're giving that calendar at the beginning of the school year, that should be assigned during that time. So I think that was the conversation, that we did intend for a principal not to be able to load up their PD.
Okay. And the language does say that they'll establish a professional development calendar during pre-planning. So that's still there.
Right.
That is still there. Okay. Any other questions about that?
No.
Okay. Under the school day work week, so we have a lot of language related to planning time, but it doesn't fit the requirements and the needs and the instructional responsibilities of all of our teachers. So we have proposed itinerant teachers and or non-school site service providers planning time is not required to fall within the 6.5-hour student day. Again, these are teachers that are not at the school site, and they're not assigned there. They're not getting the planning time because they have a class load of teachers with a planning time in the middle of the day. They would still be be allowed the uninterrupted planning time, but it would not have to fall within that student day because they're not actually at a site.
So if these teachers are elementary teachers, the contract already says that they have 260 minutes of planning per week, which is typically the 5 40-minute plannings and then 60 minutes from elsewhere. I don't know where they would get that, additional 60 minutes.
So this is the opening paragraph, Anthony, that covers everybody. So teachers who are assigned to teach in elementary, middle, and junior high school or high schools shall be scheduled for a period of uninterrupted planning time. This is the opening paragraph.
So
in
you're
that
just
section.
talking about the uninterrupted,
Yes.
okay,
Correct.
the
Yep.
actual chunk. Okay.
Yes. Again, I don't remember if the next clause was this past year or the year before when we agreed. I think it's been now 2 sessions ago where we talked about teachers could leave the school site during their workday. And we had a lot of conversation at the table about what that meant. And it clearly was not supposed to be before school started, or if you had first period planning, you didn't have to show up until the middle of first period, or at the end of the day, you weren't going to use it to leave, leave the building early. But we wanted to really get in and clarify the conversation that we had at the table about this clause. So we did a little bit of editing to read: a teacher may leave the school site during his or her scheduled planning period or lunch after signing out on a Google form designated for such purpose. The teacher must sign in if returning to the school site prior to the end of the day. If less than the time allowed for his or her planning period or lunch, the time away from the site shall not be charged against the teacher's sick, personal, or compensatory time. This procedure is not meant to provide approval for the teacher with first period planning to regularly arrive late, or, and then the language is their last period planning to regularly leave the building early. So what we have found is, I think I hope that I speak for all of us that we were pretty clear on the intent of this language, but we have people that'll leave during planning time and then come back a half hour after their classes start. And, there's been no arrangement for coverage, and they're not capturing that time in any sort of, timekeeping method. So this, when we agreed to it, was about the planning period and being able to, run down and cash a check or grab a Coke. I remember those conversations at the table, but it's just to clarify the process a little bit more. Questions about that?
No.
So the next one has to do with teaching assignments and duties. So there is a lot of, as you know, we have a lot of expectations from parents and advocates and state requirements and mandates. And we do our best to adhere to the language about, mandatory lesson planning and submission of lesson plans and the timeliness and when that can happen. But we are really in need of some support when it comes to some of the issues that we face when we're working with our ESE student population. So specifically under the area of lesson planning, it talks about lesson plans are required and should reflect the standards and essential elements of the targeted state standards, the evidence of learning assessment, the daily learning activities. It identifies the format for the plans. Then it says teachers are expected to show necessary documentation for the students with IEPs, 504 plans, ESOL requirements, and other accommodations. We have added such documentation includes a log recording of when services were provided, and for all ESE direct services provided, the time, date, and topic of what was taught. Again, does not have to be in weekly lesson plans, but when they have to show the necessary documentation for those accommodations. Routine submission, the sentence right above the A and B, routine submission of lesson plans shall not be required except in the following instances. When the performance of the teacher has been less than satisfactory, in this event, the format and content may be part of the assistance plan, or for teachers of students with disability whose IEP implementation is being challenged or monitored for compliance. I think that's really important because we are being monitored more and more all the time related to our services toward our ESE students. And, you know, this is in support of being able to respond and comply with the monitoring that we are, you know, being held to.
So you
I'm
have
sorry.
a few questions if you're ready.
Well, it all kind of falls together. Do you want me to keep going with this one and then, or do you want to stop and?
Well, I want to ask some questions on this. So first of all, are you saying even for accommodations that you would expect this log to be kept? Or are you just saying, you know, this student, you know, gets speech therapy and, you know, they're just writing?
So one of the things that's happening is when we, and I have to put back my principal hat on for a minute. And I know, you know, we've got the principals on the call and Melissa's on the call as well. But one of the things that I know is that we are required to show that we are meeting compliance with IEPs and accommodations more and more within the school, within all of our students, on more state reports and more situations where advocates are being brought in, and we are being you know, sued. That's not the right word. We are being again taken to task for our compliance.
Yeah,
exponentially. So when we go to provide documentation, we don't have documentation to provide to people that show that we're meeting the services of the students because it's not captured anywhere.
Well, I would argue that the language already calls for documentation to be kept in the previous sentence, but asking teachers to do a log like this, and you know, let's say you have in an elementary class, you can easily have 5 students with disabilities. This would be a tremendous amount of work to keep up with that each and every day. What we know is, yes, you're supposed to provide documentation, but let's say you shortened an assignment. I mean, it could just be you wrote shortened assignment on there. Let's say, I can
tell you, we have so many teachers out there that have these wonderful wonderful methods of capturing this information. And, you know, perhaps we can come to some meeting of the mind in how to do that to make it less onerous on a teacher.
Dr. Green, just like Anthony said, that I had a class once, I had 22 of 27 high school juniors that had an IEP, a 504, or was ELL. And that was just one of my classes. So and right now I just pulled up my kids' focus. Teachers can do this in focus, and they already do it. My kids' teachers are marking when he is getting his 504 accommodations. We don't need to put a logbook in our contract language. Our contract language already calls for this, and teachers are already doing this. If there's a teacher that isn't keeping track, then I think that's something that needs to be handled on that case-by-case basis, using not only our contract language, but also, you know, the Edline had this feature as well. And I think Focus is arguably, I don't think Focus is better, but arguably better in this area for keeping track, and teachers are doing it.
So we will have some more conversation, and maybe we can work the language that, you know, might be suitable. But
so Dr. Green, let me ask you, I had another question. For your B there, for teachers of students with disabilities who IEP implementation is being challenged or monitored, can you be more specific about challenged or monitored by who? Are you saying a civil rights complaint, or is this the principal that decides they're monitoring this? I think,
no, we're
I
not.
think
We're
you're,
not talking
I'm
about
assuming
principals.
you're talking about a civil rights investigation, right?
I'll see if we can be more clear as to monitoring, or, I mean, there's a lot more entities that are monitoring than just civil rights situations. So we'll try and clarify that a bit more.
Okay.
Okay. So I added a new 20. We added a new 20, which says teachers coming to IEP and or 504 meetings are expected to bring appropriate documentation and to be prepared to identify and answer questions about documentation, IEP goal data, accommodation data, provisions of special education, and related services.
I will say that, you know, obviously this already is an expectation, and to give you a taste of your own medicine, why would we need this in the contract if it's already an expectation of teachers' professional duties, you know, as well as IPIS?
So I'm going to write that down.
Anthony, I just wanted to second something, and I don't think this was the intended consequence, but Dr. Green, I have seen multiple times where they grab whatever teacher is on planning or whatever activity teacher is on planning, and they're like, tag, you're it. You're the general education teacher for this meeting. So I don't think it was your, you know, I don't think you're implying that the teacher they tagged 2 minutes before the meeting needs to be prepared. And I understand what you're trying to get at, but I do know that happens probably weekly at some schools where it's like, hey, I need you to do something. Or if you're you know, on the wheel and you have an open plan and tag, you're it for this meeting as the general education teacher. So I think there would be some concerns along that line as well.
Okay, I'm writing this down. That's why I'm not looking up. Sorry, I was writing. Okay, I'm going to go on. So that makes the former 2021, and it said there will be no expectation that IEP be written more than a week before the IEP conference. We've added, except in cases involving attorneys, advocates, or litigation, which will require IEPs to be written 2 weeks prior to the IEP meeting or conference, provided the writer of the IEP is given 48 hours notice.
So, who is that benefiting if you guys had 2 weeks? I mean, is this to protect the teacher? Is it to, I mean, who's reviewing this thing 2 weeks in advance?
there
Or, I
are-
mean, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Are we just being convenient for these I'll just say ambulance chasers, or are we doing this to protect the teacher?
So there is a lot of preparation that goes in anytime we're dealing with these sorts of things, where meetings are scheduled weeks in advance of any other sort of action that's happening. And it's to keep us prepared to be involved in the case appropriately and being able to develop our responses as well.
I would say that it may seem like that could be a burden on teachers, but we know that in the case of, you know, civil rights investigation for services not provided, the district is ultimately it's typically not the union that would defend the teacher in that case. It would be the district. So this could be something to really help.
Okay. So I didn't change anything with 21 except that it renumbers it to 22 if we add the 20. Any other questions on that part?
No.
Okay. Faculty meetings, we crossed out any other meetings. So if this section is only about faculty meetings, then I guess it should be about faculty meetings. I guess because we weren't here when the language was created, didn't know what any other meetings was about.
Okay. Well, what the intention of this language was that our teachers weren't receiving homework assignments. Oh, well, we have a book study and we need you to read chapters 1 through 5 by next Monday and prepare a PowerPoint presentation to share with the other teachers. So I think,
Well, but there are some meetings, Anthony, that they have to do some pre-work for. We've just talked about a couple of them, and those would be the IEP conferences and the meetings, surrounding services such as that. They have to be prepared for those meetings. They have to bring their data to some of the meetings. So
I'm rereading this, Dr. Green. I'm hearing what you're saying. I think, as terms change, PLC, PLT, those were popular terms 10 years ago, but now we have data meetings or, so I think the intention with that was just any sort of meeting of this such that that our teachers weren't being disciplined for that, for not doing homework assignments. Let us think about that some more. Maybe you can too.
Okay. All right. So, there's been a lot of talk related to the legislature and the expectations of what is and is not being taught in the classroom. We have added some language here, which we think protects all parties. So it's related to academic freedom, and the sentence in there that says academic freedom shall mean that teachers are free to present instructional materials which are pertinent to the subject and level taught within the outlines of the appropriate course content within the planned instructional program as determined by normal instruction and/or procedures as previously approved by the board, and that meets Florida statute and/or Florida Administrative Code for required instruction.
Talk to me about the Florida Administrative Code.
They're the Florida statute. Some of the rules begin with FS, and Florida Administrative Code, like your 6A 1081, the principles for professional conduct for the education profession in Florida. That's an administrative code as opposed to a statute, but it's all required. It's all required.
Are those administrative codes found in one location or?
Yes. Now you're going to ask me where that is. I don't know, but if you Google Florida Administrative Code, you're going to find all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I understand your intention with this.
Okay. So the next piece of language, I think also is an attempt to clean up what's happening. So and this is not a salary proposal, please know, it's just under the section of salary. So the salary, beginning with 2002-03 school year, the following language shall be implemented. The salary of a continuing contract or professional services contract teacher, as reflected in sectional A of this article, shall remain the same dollar amount under the following conditions. A continuing contract or professional services contract teacher are the ones that are not going to be non-reappointed for getting a needs improvement on their final evaluation, on their summative part 1 evaluation. So if they receive a needs improvement, their movement on the salary schedule is frozen because pay for performance only relates to highly effective and effective. So again, we're just trying to make the language fit what's happening with pay for performance and the legislature. So if a professional services or continuing contract teacher receives an overall needs to improvement on his or her evaluation, the teacher's movement on the salary schedule shall be frozen for the subsequent school year until that teacher demonstrates effective performance. And that T should be little t. after the red line 2 years. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. If the teacher receives an overall unsatisfactory, the teacher's movement on the salary schedule is frozen until that teacher reaches effective as well. And again, that's just an intent to have the language fit what's happening with pay for performance.
So some of this is statute. Did you reviewed the statute?
So it's all related to statute, but our language doesn't match the statute.
Okay.
Because a teacher that has, because pay for performance is only about highly effective and effective. If you have less than effective, you don't get pay for performance.
Right.
But our contract talked about, you know, a teacher receiving an overall needs to improve on his or her evaluation is frozen on the salary schedule. Well, really, that only relates to continuing contract and professional services contract, because if I'm an annual contract teacher and I receive a needs improvement, I'm non-reappointed. Because the three things you need to be reappointed are a summative part 2 that's effective or higher, a summative part 1 that's effective or higher, and no discipline that rose to the level of a letter of reprimand or higher. So it matches what's in statute. Okay. And then lastly, our last proposal is we would like to see 2 years for language and 1 year for salary. So language would expire at the end of 2023 and salary would expire at the end of this year.
So what you're saying is you wouldn't, you're asking that full book negotiations are only every 2 years?
On this particular, for this particular contract, yes. I can't say forever and in perpetuity, but for this one, yes. And if you remember, we requested that a year ago as well.
Okay. And that would be for both sides, right? Because
that would be for both sides.
You're getting as bad as I am with the amount of language you just gave me.
Yeah, that'd be for both sides.
All right. Did any of my team have any questions on these proposals? Okay, I don't.
Anthony, I had one question about the IEP documentation.
Yes.
Having been just an ESC teacher last year and an inclusion teacher this year, who would that primarily fall on? If I've got an IEP student in my class as an inclusion teacher, am I documenting every time they get a service? Is the IEP, writer documenting that as well, to where it's like double the paperwork, or is one the primary and one's the secondary? Like, how would that responsibility be like delineated?
Matt, I don't understand your question. Are you talking about a co-teaching arrangement or a collaborative teaching? I'm not understanding your question.
Sure, that would work too. Like the log book that we were mentioning before. So if I've got a student in my class that gets speech and they get pulled from my class for 15 minutes, am I logging that they got speech for 15 minutes, or is the speech language pathologist logging that in her logbook?
Correct. The teacher of service. Yes.
Okay.
The teacher of service. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. So, Dr. Green, do you want to caucus and come back? What are your thoughts now?
Well, we handed a lot of language across, and we could do a lot of work if we had time to, meet with people about the language that on our side. I'm speaking about from our side. Meet with the people, get some information, do a little bit of research on some of the things that you've passed across. So, I'm not sure what your thought process is, but if you're amenable, I'd like to come back on the 27th, ready to talk about the proposals that each of us passed across, ready to move forward.
Yeah, I can I could agree to that, because we have considerable amount of proposals to look at too. And I think in the what's the old expression, go slow to go fast
Yes.
type philosophy. So I can agree to that, and so we'll come back at 3:00 on the 27th with some tentative agreements, hopefully some
Yep.
counter proposals.
And
so
I'll
on.
send you, Anthony, I'm going to send you my Word doc, but I didn't do it on every page and I couldn't make it work to every page. So I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. And then if my team, if you guys could stay on the call for a few minutes so we could talk, and I'll end
And
the
if my
recording.
team would log into our caucus session, I would appreciate it as well.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
appreciate your time.